I'm Ethan Mitchell, 30 years old, living in a small apartment in Brooklyn. I've always been the quiet one, the outsider in a family of overachievers. My older brother James is the golden child, successful, charming, and always in the spotlight. Meanwhile, I've spent most of my life in the shadows, always feeling like I wasn't quite enough. My parents never really noticed. I chose a different path, documentary filmmaking, something they didn't understand or care about. It wasn't until one fateful night, when I received an unexpected call from my neighbor Rachel, that I realized just how deeply my family's indifference to me ran. Something was about to be uncovered, something I should have never known. What Rachel told me that night changed everything, and now, I'm not sure who I can trust anymore. I had just gotten into bed, the flickering lights from the city outside casting long shadows across my living room. My mind was racing through a script I was editing for a project, but exhaustion pulled me into an almost dreamless sleep. That's when the phone rang. It was 3 a.m. I groggily reached over and grabbed the phone, expecting to see a number from a client or maybe a late-night call from a friend. But when I saw Rachel's name flash across the screen, I felt an instant jolt of tension. She sounded frantic. "Ethan, you need to come over. Now. I found something. Something you have to hear. But you can't tell anyone, especially not your brother." Her voice trembled, the words rushing out like a dam about to break. I wanted to ask her why, what the hell she was talking about, but I knew from the urgency in her tone that I couldn't waste time. I pulled on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and left. Rachel's apartment was only a few floors up, but my heart was pounding by the time I reached her door. The hallway smelled faintly of lavender and dust, like every apartment building I'd ever been in. But tonight, the air felt heavy, suffocating, as though I was about to step into something I couldn't escape. Rachel opened the door immediately, her face pale, eyes wide. She ushered me in, closing the door behind me with a strange finality. "Listen," she said, her voice low. "I didn't know if I should show you this, but I have to. I don't know who else to trust." She motioned for me to sit. On the table in front of me was her laptop, the screen glowing faintly in the dark room. She opened a file and hit play. The audio filled the room, grainy and distorted, but enough for me to make out a few words. At first, I couldn't understand the context, the words jumbled and overlapping. But then, one word hit me like a punch to the gut. Ethan. My name. I leaned forward, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound in the room, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint buzz of a light bulb above us, the sound of my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. "This is from my security system," Rachel whispered. "I found this when I was checking the footage earlier today. Someone was here. They were talking about you. And it doesn't make sense, Ethan. It just doesn't." The recording continued. I heard the voice again, one I didn't recognize, speaking to someone else, a low murmur of conversation. I couldn't make out most of it, but I heard the unmistakable sound of my brother's name, James, thrown in the mix. There was mention of money, property, and something about sealing the deal. My blood ran cold. I turned to Rachel, panic rising in my throat. "What is this? Why would they talk about me like this? Why does James's name come up?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know. But there's more, Ethan. There's a lot more. I've been watching this for hours, and each time, I learned something new. Whoever did this knows things about you, about your life, that nobody should know." I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me. The recording, faint, distorted, eerie, seemed to hold the answers I hadn't even known to ask. I felt the walls closing in. And then it hit me. "Who was that person on the tape?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who were they talking to?" Rachel took a deep breath, eyes darting to the corner of the room. "I don't know, but I think they were trying to set you up, Ethan. To make you believe something terrible." My mind raced. Who would want to frame me? And why? My phone buzzed suddenly, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at it. It was a message from James. I'm coming over. We need to talk. I stood up, panic gripping me as my hand froze over the phone. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I grabbed Rachel's arm, my voice trembling. What is going on? What have I gotten myself into? She looked at me, her face pale. You don't know yet, Ethan. But you're not the only one being watched. There's something bigger at play here. And it's not just your brother anymore. They're everywhere. My heart raced. I had no idea what I was walking into. But I knew, in that moment, that this was only the beginning. I have to go to Rachel's now. But I have no idea what I'm walking into. I shouldn't have gone to Rachel's apartment. Something about the way she spoke, nervous, urgent, gnawed at me even as I walked out the door. It felt like a bad decision from the moment I hit the street. But curiosity, the same one that had gotten me in trouble my whole life, drove me onward. I should have listened to the voice that said, don't trust this. But now, I was already in too deep. I knocked on Rachel's door, trying to steady my breath. The hallway was still, too still, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Her door creaked open just a fraction, and Rachel's pale face peeked through the crack. Her eyes were wide, stricken, as though she'd just seen something she couldn't unsee. You came, she said, barely above a whisper, her voice tight with fear. I am sorry I pulled you into this. I nodded, forcing a calm I didn't feel. Rachel, what's going on? What's on that recording? Without saying anything, she stepped aside to let me in. The room smelled like stale coffee and something metallic, maybe fear, maybe something else. Her laptop sat open on the coffee table. I sat down slowly, watching her carefully. The tension between us was so thick it felt suffocating. She was trembling, almost too much to be simply afraid. It's not what you think, Rachel said, her voice cracking. I didn't want you to know this way, but it's out of my hands now. The moment she clicked play, a faint crackling filled the room. The recording sounded like a distant conversation, almost as if it was being whispered through thick glass. Then, the word came clear as day. Ethan. My name. I froze. Why would anyone? The voice was muffled, a man's voice. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. The recording repeated snippets of conversations I couldn't fully make out, but certain words rose above the static. Deal. Property. Ethan. I leaned in closer, a cold chill running down my spine. The tape replayed itself once more, but this time I caught a different word, James. I looked up at Rachel, confusion clouding my thoughts. Why is my brother's name in this? What does this mean? Rachel stared at the screen, her fingers twitching at the mouse, but she didn't click anything. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But it's not just you. They're involved in something much bigger, Ethan. Something illegal. What does my brother have to do with this? She turned away, pacing nervously. I think it's all connected. Ethan, I need you to trust me on this. There's a reason your name was brought up. You're being used, manipulated, and I think it's all tied to. She stopped abruptly, eyes darting to the door. My heart pounded in my chest. I hadn't heard anyone approach, but Rachel's gaze held a warning that I couldn't ignore. Someone's coming, she whispered. You need to leave. Now. Before I could even react, the faint sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. They were slow, deliberate, like someone was waiting for me to notice. I stood up, adrenaline coursing through me. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but I couldn't leave without answers. Rachel, I hissed, who's coming? What do you know about this? She was already moving toward the door, her hand shaking as she reached for the handle. It's too late to explain. You don't understand. She didn't finish her sentence. The door to the hallway creaked open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, dark hair, and wore a long coat that hung loosely around his frame. His presence was unsettling, like someone who had seen too much but wasn't afraid to show it. He didn't look at Rachel. His cold gaze locked onto me. "Ethan Mitchell," he said, his voice even, almost robotic. "It's time for you to come with me." My heart stopped. Who the hell was this? I took a step back, every instinct telling me to run, but I was rooted to the floor, caught in his stare. Rachel moved behind me, her voice cracking. "No. I told you, he doesn't know, "I'm sorry," the man interrupted, his voice growing colder, his hand moving toward his jacket. "This is how it has to be. Now." I didn't even see the flash of metal before he reached for it. The gun. It was so sudden, so sharp, the air around us thick with the sense that things were spiraling out of control. For a split second, I thought about fighting, but I wasn't armed, and I had no idea what was happening. "Rachel," I said, my voice hoarse, "what's going on? Who are you working with?" But Rachel's face, pale and terrified, was already looking past me, her eyes wide with fear. She wasn't going to answer. She couldn't. My mind raced. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the man in front of me wasn't going to let that happen. The air felt thick, suffocating, like I had just walked into a trap I couldn't escape. The gun was still raised, and I realized something I had failed to see earlier. I was being played. The man wasn't here for Rachel. He was here for me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos churning inside me. The man didn't answer immediately. He just stepped forward, closing the distance between us. And then, as he pulled me toward the door, he whispered, "You don't know yet, Ethan. But you will soon enough. Your life is about to change forever." Just when I thought I had escaped, a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I turned, only to find someone I thought was dead. The man's grip was cold as he pulled me out of Rachel's apartment, dragging me down the hall like a rag doll. His eyes never left me, dark, empty, calculating. My heart pounded as I tried to break free, but his hold was like iron. I could hear Rachel behind us, her voice desperate, pleading for him to let me go, but the man didn't even flinch. The hallway was narrow, the walls closing in as we moved. I had no idea where we were going, only that my mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Who was this man? Why was Rachel involved? What the hell was going on? "Let me go," I spat, my voice rough with panic. "I don't know what you want, but—" "You don't need to know," he cut me off, his voice like ice. "You just need to follow." His words were like a slap in the face. The fear I'd been pushing down hit me all at once, like a tidal wave. My breath quickened, but I forced myself to focus. I couldn't let him break me, not yet. We reached the stairs. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it all. The recording. Rachel's warnings. James. My brother's name kept echoing in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being dragged deeper into something much bigger than I understood. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, desperate to cling to any semblance of control. He didn't answer. We exited the building and stepped into the cool night air. The streetlights cast long shadows, making the world feel small and dangerous. I glanced around, looking for any sign of escape. But the street was empty, no cars, no people. Just the distant hum of the city, too far away to be any help. He shoved me toward a black van parked at the curb. I felt my stomach twist. The fear was no longer just a vague sensation, it was raw, real, and choking me. I tried to steady my breathing, but it was hard. I didn't know who this man was. But I knew he had control. And that terrified me. The door slammed shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The man sat across from me, the silence stretching between us, heavy and suffocating. I tried to get a grip on myself, to think through the fog of panic clouding my mind. "What do you want with me? Why my brother's name?" He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. "Your brother is the key," he said, his voice low. "But you're the pawn." I blinked, confused. Upon? James doesn't know we're watching, he continued, like he hadn't heard me. He thinks he's in control, but we've been tracking you for months. Everything about you, everything about your family. We know it all. His words hung in the air, suffocating me. Tracking me? The weight of his words hit me like a freight train. 4 months? How had I never noticed? How could I have been so blind? The van hit a bump in the road, jarring me from my thoughts. My body tensed, and I realized I had to get out, now. My hands clenched into fists. I needed to think, to find a way out of this. Why me? I asked again, struggling to keep my voice steady. Why would you use me to get to James? He smirked. A cold, twisted smile that sent a shiver down my spine. James is just a means to an end. You, Ethan, are the real prize. I stared at him, trying to piece together the puzzle that was falling apart in front of me. What did he mean? Why was I the prize? My mind raced. The recording. The way Rachel had looked at me, terrified. She knew something she hadn't told me. I felt like I was missing a huge part of the story, and I hated it. The van made another turn, and my stomach dropped. Where were they taking me? My thoughts were interrupted as the man reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone, his fingers moving quickly over the screen. I watched, heart hammering in my chest, as he pressed a few buttons, then held the phone out to me. The screen flickered to life. It was a video. And on the screen, there was Rachel. She was standing in front of a mirror, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Ethan, she said softly, her voice shaky. I didn't want you to know this, but they have a plan. I tried to warn you, but it's too late now. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I couldn't breathe. The video cut abruptly. I was left staring at the blank screen, the weight of what Rachel had said sinking in. Too late, I whispered to myself, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I turned to the man, my voice a low growl. What have you done to her? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned his attention back to his phone, typing something furiously. I wanted to lunge at him, to demand answers, but I knew better. He had all the power. All I could do was wait and pray I wasn't next. The van suddenly screeched to a halt. My body jolted forward, and I had to brace myself against the seat. Get out, he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. I hesitated. But the fear, the sense of something bigger than me, was already closing in. I had no choice. I had to follow. I stepped out of the van and found myself facing a large, imposing building. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. This place, it felt wrong. Cold, dark, dangerous. The man stepped out behind me. You're about to learn just how deep this goes, he said, his voice a low whisper. And you won't like what you find. I didn't need to ask any more questions. I knew this was just the beginning. I thought I had been prepared for everything. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to face. My chest burned with every breath as the van's engine cut out. The cool night air was thick with tension, like a blade pressed against my throat. The man who had dragged me here didn't speak. He just looked at me with those dead, unreadable eyes. It felt like he could see straight through my skin. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. It was far, but close enough to remind me just how alone I was. I tried to steady my breathing, but my pulse was racing. My mind churned with fragments of memories, Rachel's voice, the recording, the mention of James. Everything was a puzzle I couldn't yet grasp. He finally spoke, his voice low and precise, inside. The door next to us was heavy steel, marked with peeling paint and rust. A sign above it flickered, authorized personnel only. I didn't want to go in. But I had no choice. We stepped inside, and the world changed. The air was stale. Dim lights hung overhead, casting long, trembling shadows. The place smelled like old paper and secrets. A large metal table sat in the middle of the room. There were files, stacks of them, everywhere. Names. Numbers. Documents. Bank statements with anonymous signatures. Password logs. Information that wasn't supposed to exist. My head snapped to the stacks of paper. Property transfer, the man said, stepping closer. Signed in your name. Multiple times. Banks, real estate, everything. I blinked. The room tilted. That's not possible, my signature is forged, he finished for me. My stomach dropped. In that moment I remembered a quote I once read, "Truth hides in plain sight." I never understood it, until now. Every clue was right in front of me, and I'd missed it. I swallowed hard. The man didn't show any expression. He handed me a folder, thick with paperwork. I opened it with shaking hands. There it was, my name, my identity, my life being traded like currency. You need to read, he said, his voice calm. But first, you need to understand something. I looked up. What? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a bank of monitors on the far wall. With a slow, deliberate movement he switched one on. The screen flickered to life. It showed a hallway. A security camera feed. And there, shifting in the grainy footage, was a figure moving with a purpose that made my blood run cold. It was me. Or someone who looked exactly like me. Except it wasn't. My breath caught. I felt like the air left my lungs entirely. This is your twin, the man said without preamble. I stared at the screen. The figure stopped. Turned. And I swear, my face looked back at me. My twin brother. The one I thought was dead. I staggered back. My head spun. My heart felt like it was going to explode. No, I whispered. That can't be real. The man didn't flinch. He hit another button. Another camera. Another angle. More footage. Same person. Same clothes. Same face. I closed my eyes. Tried to breathe. Tried to make sense of it all. A memory rang out loud in my head. The greatest trick fate ever pulled was convincing us it didn't exist. I had thought it was about bad luck. I was wrong. Then a sound behind me, like metal scraping against concrete, made me snap around. The man was gone. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure someone across the building could hear it. I scanned the room. Empty. Abandoned. Only the hum of the monitors. I spun back to the screens, and on one feed, my twin was gone. Disappeared. My breath caught again. A new door at the far end of the room opened. A faint click, like a lock disengaging. Someone entered slowly, steps measured, deliberate. I couldn't see their face, but I felt it, like ice creeping up my spine. "What are you doing here?" a voice said. Calm. Familiar. I froze. The voice made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was a voice I never expected to hear. "Why are you here?" I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure stepped into the dim light. James. My brother. Not dead. Not distant. Standing smack in the middle of a nightmare I didn't know I was living. His eyes were unreadable. His posture was calm. Too calm. "Ethan," he said, like he'd been expecting me. "I didn't think you'd figure it out so quickly." My mind recoiled. You knew?" He didn't blink. "Of course. You're not the only one with access. There are things in motion, things you wouldn't understand." I felt the room tilt again. Everything I thought I knew, my family, my identity, my life, was unraveling. James took a step closer. His face was shadowed, but something in his eyes made me doubt everything Rachel had told me. Look, he continued, voice steady, you're in danger. Not just from them, from us. We were supposed to handle this together. I shook my head. Why would I trust you? You never cared about me. He reached toward me, slowly, intentionally. Like he wanted to calm me. Like he wanted to control me. You don't trust anyone, he said. But trust me. That man outside, he's not here to protect you. I opened my mouth to argue. But before I could speak, a loud bang echoed from the hall outside, a gunshot. My breath stopped. James's face didn't change. But mine did. Because I realized I wasn't just in danger. I was in the eye of a storm. A storm with no end. Just when I thought I had escaped, a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I turned, only to find someone I thought was dead. The gunshot still echoed in my ears as I stumbled backwards, my eyes fixed on James. My own brother. The man I thought I'd buried in the past, both physically and emotionally, was standing in front of me, alive and cold as ice. Why? The word barely left my lips, thin and broken. His expression didn't change. He was studying me, like he always did, always trying to read me. Always one step ahead. You don't get it, do you? He said softly, his voice carrying an edge of something darker than I had ever heard before. This isn't just about you. The room spun around me, my mind racing to catch up with the disorienting whirlwind. What do you mean? I don't understand. You've been gone for years. Why now? James stepped forward, his steps slow, methodical. He paused for a moment, then said, it's not about what you understand. It's about what I'm going to make you understand. You're too far in now. There's no way out. My heart pounded harder, threatening to break through my chest. The cold walls of the room pressed in around me. I could almost hear the clinking of chains in the distance. I couldn't escape this. Not anymore. You're a part of something bigger than yourself, James continued, his voice low. Something you don't even know about yet. And now, you'll never be able to walk away. Not without consequences. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. What do you want from me? He glanced at me with pity, as if I were a child, as if my questions were meaningless. It's too late for answers. You're already in the game, Ethan. Whether you want to be or not. My body tensed as I heard a noise from behind, another door opening, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. It was too slow. Too deliberate. I wasn't alone. Someone else was watching, someone who had been waiting. James didn't flinch. He just kept his eyes on mine. Remember, you're not in control anymore. You haven't been for a long time. The door opened wider. Two figures stepped inside, cloaked in shadows. I could barely make them out in the dim light. But the presence of them, their weight in the air, sent a chill down my spine. One of them, a woman, stepped forward. She was tall, her movements precise. Her eyes, sharp, calculating, landed on me. You were always good at playing pretend, Ethan, she said. Her voice was smooth, practiced. But now, the game is real. And there are no more rules. I swallowed hard. Who are you? She smiled, one of those smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Someone who's been waiting for you to wake up. And now that you're awake, you'll help us finish what was started. A shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. This was more than I could handle. More than I could ever have imagined. This wasn't just about money or power. This was something deeper. Something older. You really think this is over? The woman asked, her eyes narrowing. You have no idea what's at stake. I tried to steady my breathing. What do you want from me? She gestured toward James. You're just the pawn, Ethan. He's the one calling the shots. I looked at James, my mind racing. You've been controlling all of this. From the start. He gave a brief nod. You're right. But you've been useful. That's why you're still alive. I stepped back, the walls closing in on me. I don't want any part of this. James's expression remained unchanged. Too late for that, brother. The woman smiled again, her eyes cold. Now, let's talk about the future. About the plans you're going to help us execute. I felt my stomach twist. There was no escape. They had me cornered. There was no turning back now. I glanced at the door, the exit just beyond reach. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't the one pulling the strings anymore. You have two choices, James said, his voice calm but chilling. Play along, or we'll make sure you regret it. I clenched my fists, trying to keep the anger from spilling over. But I knew what I had to do. I didn't have a choice. I'm not afraid of you, I spat. He chuckled darkly. You should be. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every inch of my body screamed to run, to break free. But I was trapped. Trapped in a web I didn't understand. A web they'd woven with threads of lies, manipulation, and power. I was no longer in control of my own fate. The rules had shifted, and I was left scrambling to catch up. Suddenly, the sound of a door slamming open made me jump. Another figure stepped inside, moving with confidence. A man I recognized. Nolan. His eyes were locked on mine, his face unreadable. Did I miss something? He asked, his voice smooth, but with an edge of something I couldn't place. I froze. The moment everything changed. Not everyone who walks in the door is a friend, I thought to myself, a feeling of dread washing over me. Nolan's eyes narrowed. I believe it's time we discussed our next move. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. The game was far from over. The weight of the room felt suffocating, the air thick with the promise of consequences. I stood frozen, not out of fear, but out of pure disbelief. It was happening. Everything, every choice, every lie, every manipulation was spiraling towards a single point. And I was in the center of it all. You think this is the end, Ethan? James's voice sliced through the tension, cold and sharp. It's only the beginning. I wanted to fight back, to demand explanations, but I knew it wouldn't matter. They were all waiting for something, a signal, a moment of weakness. And that's when I realized the game was never mine to win. I shifted, feeling the weight of their eyes on me, the eyes of the ones who had been orchestrating this entire mess from the start. They had planned everything, the deaths, the betrayals, the secrets buried too deep to uncover. They'd made sure I was in the middle of it all, helpless, a pawn in a game I didn't even understand. Let's talk about the future, the woman said again, her voice as smooth as it was dangerous. The future we're going to shape. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. The future? You think I'm going to help you build that future? After everything? She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the cold floor. You don't have a choice. You're already in deeper than you realize. I clenched my fists. I wasn't going down without a fight. But what was the point? Every plan I made, every move I thought I was in control of, was a distraction, a feint. They had it all mapped out. Do you think you can escape from this? She continued, her voice like ice. We've already won. It's only a matter of time until everything falls into place. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. What did she mean? What did I miss? But before I could process it, a flicker of recognition sparked in me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been watching this entire thing unravel from the outside, but what if I had been the one they needed all along? What if I was the key to their plan? I had been the last piece they needed, and I had been too blind to see it. The woman looked at me with a smirk that felt like a victory. You were never supposed to be the hero, Ethan, she whispered. You were always the tool. And in that instant, I understood. The twist, the one thing that had eluded me all this time, was staring me right in the face. It wasn't about power or money. It wasn't about control. It was about something far more insidious. It was about using me to cover their tracks, to bury the truth so deep it would never see the light of day. I could feel the walls closing in again. I was suffocating in the darkness of their plan. But this time, I wasn't going to let it end like this. I stepped forward, my voice steady but laced with anger. You think I'm a tool, huh? Maybe I've been a tool for you all along, but I'm not playing anymore. They all froze, their eyes narrowing. James was watching me, almost calculating, as if waiting for me to slip up, to reveal my hand. But I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I turned, pacing to the far corner of the room. You're right. I've been the pawn in this twisted game. But I know something you don't. The woman's eyes gleamed with malice. And what's that? I met her gaze, my own fire igniting. The game's over. In a split second, I was moving. It was a blur of action, of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I grabbed the evidence, the one thing they didn't know I had hidden away. The truth was finally in my hands. I turned to face them. James's expression was one of disbelief, his eyes flickering with panic. The woman stepped back, her face draining of color. You think you can just walk away? James spat. You're making a mistake. No, James, I said, my voice cold. The mistake was thinking you had me cornered. You never did. With one final push, I rushed toward the door, slamming it open with enough force to knock the guards off balance. The truth was out. It was over. I had taken control. I stepped into the night, the cold air biting at my skin, my breath quick and shallow. For the first time in years, I felt free. But as I walked away, a dark thought lingered in my mind. No one ever truly escapes the game. You can never outrun your past, I reminded myself. But I didn't care anymore. The truth had a price. And now, I was finally ready to pay it.